Dark Deity. When I first saw this game, I thought to myself, oh hey, it's another Fire Emblem ROM hack. But eventually it evolved into a little bit more than that, and since it seems to take a lot of inspiration from Fire Emblem, and I obviously really like Fire Emblem, I became pretty curious about what it could become. So I reached out to the developers over Discord, and they very kindly agreed to sit down and chat with me, as well as show some never-before-revealed content just for you guys here in this video. We had a really cool conversation about a bunch of different things that you usually wouldn't be able to talk to developers about, so keep watching. I'll also leave a link to all of their social media pages in the description below so you guys can check them out for more info. Now, without further ado, let me introduce Chip and Dylan, two of the developers of Dark Deity.
Hello.
Hey.
And
This is Dylan.
yeah, so go ahead. Sorry, I cut you guys off, so go ahead and reintroduce yourself.
No, you're all good.
Yeah, no worries, my man.
So I want to transition into one of the mechanics that I think is the most interesting that you guys have brought up. And permadeath is a staple in Fire Emblem. And I know while this isn't necessarily a Fire Emblem game, it takes a lot of inspiration from Fire Emblem. And so you guys are doing a sort of a different take on permadeath. You're deleting it, essentially, and you're replacing it with something called grave wounds. So I'm not going to start and try to talk about this myself. I'm going to let you go for it, because you're much more knowledgeable about it than I am.
Yeah, so grave wounds is, at its core, an attempt to update permadeath as a mechanic, right? Because where a lot of permadeath games go is that the difficulty leads to a reset. It's not about, playing the game through and dealing with your actions. It's, okay, play this level for 50 minutes, and then if a unit dies, play it for another 50 minutes. And sometimes it chalks up to a 1% crit that you weren't expecting. You couldn't have really played it better. You get unlucky. And we took a look at that when we were starting talking about what we wanted for Dark Deity, and we were thinking, how can we improve upon that? How can we make a game that, if you make a strategic decision that's poor and you pay for it, how can we make it so you don't just erase that and pay in your own time to erase it? And that's where Grave Wounds came from, which is a system where when your units are defeated in battle, the different damage types, kind of correspond to the different injuries you can get, the different wounds you can receive. It's going to lower their stats permanently when they're defeated. And so how this comes through is, in a lot of cases, you will still reset. When I play test the game and I'm 3-4 turns into a level, if someone dies and they lose a stat that's really important for how I want to build them, I'll reset it. But for those later scenarios, right, where you've been playing the level for an hour, where you're at the boss and then you do everything right, but an unlucky crit happens, you can just say, you know what, I'll take -2 to strength and just play with it. And it kind of adds to the lore of your playthrough, oh yeah, my Irving has a broken arm at this point in time, or things of that nature.
And so I actually want to touch on something that you just said, and I don't know if you meant to let this slip or not, but you said there's going to be different types of grave wounds depending on the injury. Does that mean sort of that there's going to be, like you said, a broken arm, for example, is going to do -2 strength. A broken leg will be like -2 speed, for example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How would one determine what breaks or what gets injured? Is that like a random mechanic, or is that going to depend on what they're fighting against?
It's both. So it's partially random. The different damage types, say someone is using crushing damage, that has a certain number of wounds that are applicable to it, right? So that might break an arm or break a leg, whereas a more finesse-based thing would, slice a tendon or do something of that nature. So it's random within the range of what you're fighting.
Interesting. That's super cool. I had never thought of a concept like that being applied to a strategy RPG. And so there's no permadeath whatsoever. It's only grave wounds, correct?
It's the intended mode of play. So permadeath is going to be an optional mode, but the game is not optimized for it.
I see.
So, there's going to be some people who definitely want to try that at some point. We don't really recommend that as, the mode that's going to be the most fun. but it is available if you want it.
All right. Well, I mean, I've got this sort of on here as a discussion point since we're talking about modes. What kind of modes are there in this game? Let's say I've just played a Fire Emblem game and I love Fire Emblem. One, am I going to like Dark Deity?
I mean, we hope so. It depends on the game a lot, and I think people who are really big fans of building up units over the course of the game are going to definitely love Dark Deity, because that's kind of our biggest draw. I don't know if Dylan wants to touch more on that, but we definitely lean towards unit progression. That's the core of the game.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed in Fire Emblem games that I don't I appreciate in other games, but Fire Emblem doesn't necessarily do it, is like character development and really having a lot of agency in building your character, which is Chip and I have played a lot of RPGs in our days. And we love games like that, and we thought it'd be really cool to have that in Dark Deity. So, yeah,
that's interesting. I mean, so I guess if we were going to talk about sort of the development itself, and I'm sure we're going to get into a little bit of that later on, but are we looking at something that is sort of, let's say, akin to Three Houses level of free development, or is it going to be a little bit more restricted?
So that's a good question, and I don't know if the answer is short enough to fit in this format, but the thing that I will say about it is that what Three Houses had was a lot of customization that lacked punch in a lot of ways, right? Like the class growths that they applied didn't really affect your character all that much. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're going to build a Lorenz, in a lot of ways, no matter what you do, it's still Lorenz. Your endgame Lorenz isn't going to be all that much different from someone else's. And what we've wanted to do is take it so that the way that you build your character, an Irving that you take through one path can be a completely different character in every regard from one you take down another. Mm-hmm. And the core of that is that the classes that you choose contribute really, really heavily to your character aptitudes, which is sort of our, it's analogous to growths.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And actually, another thing that helps with like character growth and character identity is they're the aspects that we have in the game. Mm-hmm. They kind of give you buffs depending on which aspect you have, and I think, and you can also like change. You can trade these aspects in game, and kind of just experiment with the characters. And,
so after all the mainline development, we also have kind of the cherry on top type pieces, and that's really what the aspects are.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I know that was something that you kind of wanted to reveal a little bit for people who are watching this video. This is actually a mechanic that hasn't really been talked about before, so they are revealing this specifically for my audience here. I guess since you already transitioned into it, do you want to touch on it a little bit more?
Sure, yeah. So the eternal aspects are, we're not going to talk much about the lore behind them, but gameplay-wise, they are equipables, right? So these are items that you can trade between units that have various effects that have a pretty heavy draw on how your character plays. And so what it does is it really affects, at the end of your character's development, it changes how they play in the level itself, right? So you can change them at any time. It's sort of there's not really any direct comparison between similar types of games that I've been able to see, but we can talk about some specific ones just to give, kind of depth to the answer.
Yeah, sure, yeah, go for it.
An example.
Dylan, you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, so we have one aspect in the game. It's called Malice's Pain. Chip, do you want to kind of explain Malice's Pain?
Yeah, I can grab it. The reason we kind of have hesitated to touch on these, just to explain why it probably comes out as confusing, is that how they work depends a whole lot on the unit that you put them on. So it's hard to talk about it and say this is the universal effect, because it really affects the gameplay kind of modularly. But what Malice's Pain, what Dylan was talking about, does is it decreases a unit's defense and fortitude. Fortitude being resistance to magic damage.
Okay.
But it increases your HP by significantly more than it lowers the others. So
and this is gross, or is this like base stats?
Base
this
stats.
is base stats. So
Yeah.
it makes you take significantly more damage, but it allows you to be able to take way more damage.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have a unit that's got their HP, flip-flopping as you heal them, and then they go down really fast. But their threshold for taking damage is just huge. And it kind of adds... They all have their own feeling, but Malice's Pain, as I've used it, usually feels super risky.
Okay,
it's like you increase risk.
So what I'm getting from this, just to summarize for my own understanding, is that basically it's kind of like an equip. So for example, let's say it's a shield, but this shield will increase your resistance and lower your HP, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then this will work different on each unit. So like, let's say for me, if I'm equipping the shield, it increases my resistance and lowers my HP. But if you were to equip it, would it increase like your defense and lower your HP, for example? Is that like the level of customizability that differs?
So they don't actually vary between specific units, but the way that they affect the unit, just because we have a large variation in how units play, is that you can do lots of different things with them.
I see.
That's sort of what I mean. So if you put it on, say, a tank, right, they have enough defense and fortitude to take a few hits already, and so you're probably just making them a lot tankier. But if you put it on someone that has very little, you might be giving them a little bit of a buffer to take like one extra hit because the HP goes up that much.
I see. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. So it basically scales based on what your stats are.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
We'll talk about a couple more just because I think that's a confusing example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Probably not one to start out on,
Something that's a lot more simpler would be, and I'll send you the text for these later, but Manos' Vengeance is one of them. And all it does is pretty simple, is it increases your crit damage multiplier. So instead of doing 2x, I'm not going to talk about the specific value that it increases, but instead of doing 2x, maybe you would do 2.3x.
Okay.
Another one would be Kaithir's Revenge, which just increases counterattack damage. And essentially what that is, it's just when you attack back against an attacking unit. It just increases the damage there. It's
so you can build your units to be more enemy phase focused, player phase focused. It's just kind of an extra layer on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
just the cherry.
It's kind of like combining sort of a little bit of the Fire Emblem Heroes level of customizability, the way I'm seeing it, right? Where you can like build it for enemy phase, build it for player phase, build the units a little bit more to the quirks that they're given. Obviously, it's probably much more in depth than Fire Emblem Heroes, but for an audience that plays primarily Fire Emblem, that's the only thing I can really relate it to.
I think that's probably the closest draw. I think that's a good example.
All right, cool. And so, I don't know if you guys want to talk about anything else before I move on for internal aspects.
I think we can leave aspects at that because a lot of the fun of playing through the game is getting new ones and seeing, how can I put this to the best use,
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the message is pretty clear at this point. I know we're going to have a couple more reveals, but maybe we'll leave those till a little bit later on and we'll come back to them just to keep people excited.
That sounds good to me.
Sure, yeah.
For that. So let's take a step back a little bit and talk about sort of the origin story of Dark Deity. Like, why did you guys decide to make a game? Like, how did this come up? I know a lot of people in the Fire Emblem community start off with like doing ROM hacks or stuff. Did you guys start off doing ROM hacks and then have this evolve into like this big project, or, what's the story?
I think, well, we've had this dream since we were in middle school. And, Chip drew me into the Fire Emblem series, and Chip has always, if you've known Chip, he loves Fire Emblem. So, he drew me into the series, and since we always wanted to do this and we've always talked about it, we just said, screw it. Like, let's just make this game, the game that we've always wanted to play.
Part of the problem on my end, because I think this was, I'll talk a bit about the inception of the idea in 2018. I would Google on like a weekly basis. I would Google games like Fire Emblem.
Yeah.
And then go through the whole list, and there was nothing that satisfied me. There was nothing that scratched the same itch.
What's the closest you got? Did you play like Fire Emblem Tactics or Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre and all those?
I really like Final Fantasy Tactics, but it just doesn't have the same level of characterization and the progression to me, like, you know, for what I'm looking for, was never as satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And that was across the board. What it was, you know, I wasn't as invested in the characters, or, you know, the gameplay was. I'm not as big a fan generally of, you know, the tactical ones that are third person or isometric, rather than closer to the top down of like the GBA Fire Emblems. So when I was looking for games that were similar, there are a lot of games that are similar, but there were none that were similar in the ways that I wanted, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We would come across like Disgaea and those kinds of games. Yeah. Nothing like Fire Emblem. So we were never satisfied with that.
Mm-hmm. And so it started off with like the two of you, and then what happened from there on?
So yeah. A while.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dylan, you take this one because
it's been a long time. So it's been December 2019?
Almost 2 years now.
Or sorry, 2018 rather. Yeah, it's been a very long time. It's for the longest time it was just me and Chip just working on the game and talking about the lore, the story, and the characters. And we came across like this great team. It all comes from Chip's side. Chip's elementary school friend, Chip's roommate, and you know, they've just been an absolute boon to the team, and it's been amazing working with them. And that wasn't. How long have they been on the team, Chip?
Varying amounts. So I'll talk a bit about the individuals, because there was a lot of chance happenings that led them to join the team, which were really, really lucky.
Yeah.
For us, Sam, who's the composer, actually, I was looking for pixel artists at the time, and he went to college with me, and we knew each other vaguely. We played basketball a couple times, and so he comes over to, you know, show me his pixel art, and, you know, I'm sorry, Sam, I love you, but it wasn't very good. And then, you know, I noticed he's got a bunch of audio stuff on his laptop, and I'm like, oh, you make music? He's like, yeah, that's, you know, I think I like that more. He plays me some of his stuff. He's really, really, really talented. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you know, shit, why are we looking for pixel artists with you? Like, you want to compose for the game? And he was like, yeah. And, you know, that was over a year ago at this point, I think, and it just is kind of history from there. He joined the dev team in all capacities. He helps us, you know, with all the other aspects, but it all came from me asking friends, hey, you know anyone that does pixel art? And then suddenly we have a composer.
Yep.
Jono, of course, our map artist, is my roommate, so he suffered through me spending hours every day developing the game, while he was not a Fire Emblem fan, let's put it that way. And then slowly I won him over, and we got him on the team to work with us.
So, you know, just want to say this, like, Sam, again, our composer, he works on like everything in the game too. So he works on the lore, he works on the gameplay. Same goes for everyone else on the team. We're all working on it together. It's not just me and Chip for the story. I just want to,
Okay, so you guys have got like your own areas of specialty, but when it comes to like the overall vision, everyone's sort of contributing a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, that's a nice team dynamic, it seems.
Oh, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
definitely.
And what's it like working in like a small team trying to build your game up from scratch? Like, we always see developers revealing things, but we never really hear like about sort of the little personal tidbits. Like, I'm sure you guys have like your little disagreements, or like you have a story element that you want that other people don't want. Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah.
Dylan, should we tell the story? I feel like
no,
it's a good time. All right, I'm going to tell the story.
Maybe I'll mute myself.
I on stream to tell this story, but just because you bring up the disagreements, and Dylan and I can be disagreeable with each other often.
Yeah.
It always comes to a good place, and it's a good thing. Back in middle school, long time ago, right? Dylan's got one more year in college. I'm graduate. In middle school, Dylan and I actually got in a fist fight over some unspeakably dumb stuff.
Yeah.
You know, something about, you know, who's better at World of Warcraft, or...
It was worse than that.
RPGs. Really, really, really dumb stuff. So anytime that there's a disagreement on the team and it's getting a little heated and we're, you know, thinking, oh, this is better, it always works out, because we can sit there and say, it's never going to be that bad again. So, whenever it's been heated, it's nothing. It's nothing to us. So we've been as low as it gets.
So pretty much there are, not frequent, but sometimes there have been heated arguments about, not arguments, but disagreements about certain things we want to put in the game in certain directions. But, most of the time and pretty much every time we synthesize something better than what we were even arguing about in the first place.
Yeah.
And we come out of it improving. So it's just, it's been a whole thing with me and Chip our whole lives. And I just want to make this clear. Chip shot first in that fist fight. It was not Dylan. Just to make that clear. All right.
I won't deny it. But yeah, the important thing is that we have a bunch of really disagreeable people. We work together, but it always comes to the best outcome.
Yeah, I mean, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
I think a lot of where the disagreement comes from is just our passion. Like, we want to make this the best possible game, and if we think this works the best, then we want to push for it, right? So, all of it just comes from a place of wanting to improve the game.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that kind of thing works out. I mean, I've got one of my own friends in real life, love the guy to death, but he and I disagree on like 95% of things, to the point where I wonder, like, how are you and I friends? We disagree on everything, but it's that 5% at the end of the day where like we're able to just put that aside and be like, we agree on these 5% of things, and we like each other, and we're very respectful in the other 95%, so that we disagree on, so you can tolerate it and build something off of that. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Having a group that's able to disagree with each other is such a boon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And speaking of disagreements, why don't we talk about something that everyone, if you know anything about Fire Emblem, disagrees about, and that's boobs. Everyone disagrees about boobs. And you guys actually had a pretty big event revolving around that a couple weeks ago with one of your character reveals, which is Sloane. And I was kind of watching from afar on this one and just watching it unfold. I'll recap it very quickly for the viewers here. They revealed a character who was very Camilla-esque in the amount of skin that she was revealing and the amount of chest that she had. And a lot of people did not like that. And in their Discord server, they faced an extremely large amount of backlash. I mean, we're probably talking about like, it was a 70% majority vote of people that did not like that reveal. So take me through that. Like, how do you handle sort of backlash, not just between yourselves, we already talked about that, but from the audience or the fans that are sort of watching this come across in development?
So this is something I think our narrative lead, Nick Solari, touched on best when we were streaming a little while ago. And what he said was that people in general often don't expect developers to really care what the community is saying. They don't expect them to actually change things according to what they want. And so the discussion at times seemed like it was going to, lull towards straight negativity rather than constructive. Mm-hmm. But we're around. We want to make the game that people want to play. So we're watching this all go down. And we're like, okay, let's be honest. We kind of expected it. Maybe not to this degree, but we knew there was going to be some backlash. Mm-hmm. People clearly don't like the design. Our first thought wasn't, man, this sucks. Our first thought was, okay, how can we make it better? If people are thinking they don't want this in the game, we still have easily enough time and resources to change it. Let's just do it. So I don't know if we put the poll out to ask if people wanted it to be changed, a couple hours after the reveal happened. And then, like you said, it was overwhelmingly people wanted it to be changed. And we've already redesigned the character, and it's almost ready to show. It should be out by the time this video airs. We really do care. It can suck to, put a design of yours out and, have it shot down like that. But that's the beauty of it, is that we have people that are passionate enough that they want it to be good, like we do. And that's what allows us to make it good.
I mean, going into the whole thing, we, Chip and I, actually, when we first got in, we got the design and we got the finished product, we said, oh, this one might be a little spicy. But so going into it, we kind of almost expected it. Not gonna, personally, it hurt a little bit. Not gonna lie, because there's a character I thought wouldn't cause that much controversy as much as it did, and like you said, it did cause a lot. But yeah, I mean, our whole goal since the beginning was community feedback. That we value that over almost over our own feedback, and we love to see the community rejoice at our new design, and that's at least what we hope for. So yeah.
So what did your artist say? I mean, that's probably the person who was most affected by this. Like, what was their reaction?
You knew it was coming too. She wasn't surprised.
All right.
No, yeah, she was not.
Yeah, and she's had a lot of fun. And we've all had a lot of fun working on the new one because we've been able to play around with ideas. We got a lot of ideas from people that wanted it to be changed that were putting in, oh, you could do this or this or this. And so we kind of had a huge trove of, different ideas to test out with her. And we've come to something that's, fantastic, it's much better than the original design.
Mm-hmm.
So for us as developers, that's like, does it kind of suck to have a controversy? Yeah, but for the game to come out better because of it, we can't ask for anything more than that.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a good outlook. But I'm going to ask you I'm going to twist your arm a little bit here. Where do you draw the line between listening to the fans and modifying certain things? Because let's be real, not every single fan suggestion is going to be the best one out there, right? And even if there is a majority backlash, you're going to have to at some point be like, this is our development vision, we're sticking to it, and we can't do this.
So that's a really good question, and something we talk actually a fair amount of it as a group. And I think there's a couple things to consider. One of them being, what's the timeline? Could we change this? Is it realistic to change this? What is the benefit we get out of changing this? So for things, people will shout out class ideas or, they'll give skill ideas, and they're cool, but, we have 54 classes already done, finished in the game. So that, we're limited in terms of adding certain new things. I think changing the visuals on a character is one thing when it's universal that is not liked, but we've gotten negative feedback on other characters that, it's either not worth it to change it, or we don't agree, or I think it's hard to give you a definitive answer because it's so situational.
I think for Sloan specifically, though, I think it's the success of Sloan is really just by her appearance and by what we've revealed. So community feedback works best with her, but with things like gameplay and that sort of thing, they don't see the whole picture. They don't see how everything interacts as well as we do because we've actually tested it and played it. So I think with that sort of thing, with gameplay that depends on other aspects and mechanics in the game, I think community feedback, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but I think that once they actually experience the game in its entirety and with everything working together, I think they might have a different opinion. And that's, I think, maybe where we might draw the line, to answer your question.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, actually, and it definitely makes a lot of sense.
We definitely get a lot of feedback that we're like, wow, yeah, we should do that. Why aren't we doing that? And that stuff just goes in.
Have you ever gotten something, because I know it's pretty late in the development cycle. You guys are looking on 6 or 7 months left until the release. Have you ever gotten a suggestion where you're like, crap, I wish we thought of this beforehand and we would have loved to implement this?
We definitely have. I would have to think about what that... Does anything come to mind for you, Dylan?
Not immediately, but I don't think there's been anything that we're going to say, wow, if we put that in, that's a game changer, that would have, made the game way better.
Level we are putting in, it's still, I think the best example of that is the combat sprites, the redone combat sprites.
Mm-hmm.
Because we really weren't planning on doing that until the trailer launch, but then overwhelmingly, everyone was like, the weapon system is cool, but it kind of doesn't look great. And we were like, yeah, God, I really wish we had, started this earlier, because now we're going through it and the timeline's pretty tight. And there's not quite as much leeway as we would have liked to have had we started that, 6 months ago.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And well, since you brought up combat sprites, I guess we can go into our next unique reveal on this chat. And we've got a couple of classes that you haven't talked about before. So I don't know, take it away, whichever one you want to start with.
So I guess let's start with the Strider. First thing I think we should clarify is that we're going to be talking about two classes here. One of them is a second-tier class, and one of them is a third-tier class. Huh? And so the philosophy of design behind those two things is very different, right? Because the second-tier classes need to be made to tailor into one of the third-tier classes that you choose for it. And so we'll talk about the second tier, the Strider, first. I don't know, Dylan, if you want to read the skills. I don't know if you have them up.
I do not.
Okay, I'll go grab them.
I have it up. I can read it. So the Strider class has two unique skills. It looks like the first one is Relentless, and that one is the second attack in a double attack does increased damage. And the second skill is weightless, which is reduces the effect of weapon weight. So you've got a couple of pretty interesting mechanics there. I'm assuming a double attack isn't like a brave effect. It would just be if you're doubling, the second one does more. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then it looks like we're seeing weapon weight being a thing here, which that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's always interesting to see.
All weapons have weight, and it changes as you upgrade through the paths or equip different ones.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of the whole fantasy behind the Strider is, you're unleashing a flurry of blows. You attack really fast. You're agile. And this is, I think, a perfect way to talk about, how does it being a tier 2 class influence where we see it in the overall structure of things. And that's that when you take relentless and weightless into a third tier class, that basically you're committing to it being a speed class. Like you got a double, but when you double, you hit hard. And so that's sort of a way that you can influence. I don't know if we've revealed, say, the Outlaw in the Ranger tree, right? Mm-hmm. If you take the Strider into the Outlaw, it plays so different from any of the other tier 2s, right? Because suddenly you're taking the benefits of that third tier, but you're also, your weapons weigh much less, so it's easier to double. And then when you double, you hit really hard. So it influences the strengths of the third tier.
Yeah.
While also maintaining its identity when you're in the second tier.
Yeah. I think a good comparison is for those who have played Dragon's Dogma. There you can change classes and you get certain stat increases depending on what your previous class was. You keep it and it transfers over. It's kind of the same way with our game. Yep. The skills transfer over depending on what class you choose in tier 3. So if you get a pair of skills in tier 2 and then you go to a tier 3, like again, Outlaw from Strider, it would be a lot different, like Chip said.
Yeah, to me that looks like something like, you've got a Swordmaster, for example, in Fire Emblem who has a really low strength, but you can patch it up with Relentless, where he's actually going to get a bunch more damage on the second one because he doubles.
Exactly, yeah. There are modifications on, both the character and the class that you choose after it.
And are these sort of skills permanent, or can you, remove and...
They're permanent. You can't remove them, you can't reclass. You go this class to this class, and you keep it.
I see. Well, I was actually going to ask, since you brought it up, the whole reclass thing. So you've got 3 tiers of classes, that's right?
Yeah.
Correct. So you're going to start out in whatever the tier 1s are. In terms of tier 2s, I'm assuming you've got this sort of amount of branching, right? That you can go into?
So we do it a little strange compared to other games of the like. What we do is in tier 2, you have 4 options.
Okay.
So that's at level 10. The first class is, in some respects, sort of close to a trainee. So the first tier doesn't count all that much, just because there's less variation. And then for tier 2, you choose between 4 classes.
I see.
And then it's the same with tier 3. You choose between 4 classes.
And is it every one of those tier 2s has 4 separate choices, or do some of those tier 2s share tier 3s with some of the others?
They all share. So it's all governed by the class you start in. So if you're a ranger, which is what Garrick is in the Strider, you have the 4 options at level 10 and the 4 options for tier 3 at level 30. And they're static. So it doesn't branch when you choose your tier 2, and that's actually what allows the tier 3s to have so much variation in that they play really, really different depending on which tier 2 you take into it.
I see.
Rather than having it be like your character just gets more defined in one direction.
That's actually really interesting. So you can't even side class into any of the other ones. It's like you got to pick your poison and stick with it, basically.
Yeah.
All right, I actually like that. It feels like a little bit of sort of a Sacred Stones-esque sort of class system, except if you added another tier to it and added a couple more branches.
It's similar.
And
I think the biggest objective behind that was, we don't want classes to be something that you can switch between willy-nilly and take everything you want. Like, these characters do what they do and they do it well, but they have weaknesses. There's no character that you can shore up every weakness. And it kind of forces you to build a team that can handle varied situations.
Yeah. And another one inspiration we had for this kind of class system was replayability, which is something we really want to
Stop stealing my questions.
I'm sorry, sir.
Go for it. No, go for it.
Yeah. So Dark Deity, since the beginning, we've just wanted this game to be like very replayable and the different ways you can like build a character. So that's like one of their biggest inspirations for our class system.
Yeah, that was like my final question on my list of questions, is I was going to talk about replayability, and maybe we revisit because I've got a little bit more I can dive into, but I can definitely see.
We've got other stuff for that too.
Like you literally, if my math is correct, every character basically has like what?
16 different endgame builds.
Yeah, combinations pretty much.
Which doesn't include weapon upgrades or which aspect or which bonds you're taking. So
that's crazy.
There's a lot. Yeah.
That's really unique. Fire Emblem's never done that. I'm actually really looking forward to this.
I hate to, it sounds like a toot my own horn, but I'm the one that does the most testing for it. And personally, I love it. I have so much fun with it.
I can only imagine all these people who have FOMO who are going to be like looking up guides like, oh, what is the best class for Irving? They're looking it up like what's the best progression and stuff like that. I think with a system like this, you kind of just let it fly and do what you want in your first playthrough. You experience it, and then you go back and revisit.
Well, that's the fun of it, yeah, is doing crazy stuff, because there's some expected combinations. You're like, oh, this and this, that'd be really good. But then there's also some really weird stuff you can do that turns out well. There's so much variation.
What I can see is this turns into much more of sort of a team building thing, where it's like you're going to spec this unit into this, and you're going to complement them with a unit that's spec'd into this, and then there's a lot of like Lego mix and match that you can do here.
I would say that's very much like our game. Another thing that adds to the replayability is our customizable like campaign options that we're going to have, like randomizer.
Yeah, the randomizer is big. The whole, all the campaign customization stuff is big, but we can leave that off for the randomization question, or the replayability question.
Yeah, we can revisit it. I mean, I think we've got another class that you want to talk about, so you want to go ahead and do that? You want me to read out the skills?
Berserker. Oh, the Berserker is fun.
Ooh.
So the Berserker is a tier 3 warrior class, and kind of the fantasy of the Berserker, right? And this is how we approach all our class designs, is what do we want this to feel like? What is the vision for the class that you want to have? And then we translate that into the gameplay. And I don't know I know you have the skills up, but I'm going to send these to Dylan right now to read and talk.
Yeah, I've got them.
Yeah, well, so I would say our first and foremost, the skill that defines the Berserker is they have two skills. One of their skills is they have a chance to attack again after they have hit an enemy at a reduced damage, and that has a chance to proc off itself again. So they can hit, I mean, theoretically it can be as fucking 50 times hit. Like, hit them.
They're not going to kill the person by then, but
yeah,
they could.
Theoretically they could. And this is something we are still working on, and we're still figuring out the details of, so we can't give specific numbers right now, but the Berserker is going to be one hell of a class, let me tell you. And this next skill is also just plays into that. It's called Bloodlust, and what it does is you gain extra damage proportional to your character's missing health. So if you're at 10% health left, you're going to do like Mongo damage to this unit, and pair that with Mayhem, which was the last skill I talked about. It's that unit's screwed. But that also plays into like the glass cannon kind of vision we have for the Berserker, because if you're at 10% health, if you I don't know, if you miss, you're screwed, because you're just gonna die, and so it's really high risk. It's a really high risk class, but it's, I think, a class that is probably my favorite so far. It's just phenomenal. I really like the Berserker.
Their damage output is insane.
I'm already, like, as you guys are talking about this, the cogs of destiny in my head are turning, and I'm like envisioning these units in my playthrough just going crazy with their builds. Like, this is actually pretty cool.
Just wait till you see the tier 2s that play into it, because I know we haven't revealed any warrior characters, I don't think, but there's some. Let me put it this way: Benji Berserker is a force to be reckoned with.
Benji Berserker. Would you have him any other way?
I mean, but
yeah, there are a lot of ways.
But yeah, if you take Benji anything other than Berserker, you're a coward. objectively.
Yeah, Benji. It's God.
Benji's something else.
All right, well,
yeah.
I guess everyone in my comments section is going to be using Benji from day one now that they've heard it from the developers themselves.
I think everyone's going to be using Benji on their
It's a
first
really fun.
playthrough.
It's a really, really fun unit, and I mean that's just partially just me because there's people on the dev team that don't like Benji, but
Yeah, funnily enough, Chip and I, we didn't have a very high opinion of Benji before we kind of made him a meme. He's kind of a meme in our Discord server, so
he's Benji has increased in terms of how much I like him.
yeah.
Very, very slowly over a long period of time.
Yeah, Chip, I know you hated him so much when
The
we
original
first got him.
design yeah, we don't need to get into that, but
Yeah, we won't get into that.
I was not a fan of Benji originally.
All right. Well, here's another gameplay mechanic that you guys are actually super proud of, which is unique map objectives and how they connect into the story. Now, I am actually currently working on a video about what makes a map design good and bad in Fire Emblem, and I've definitely got my major points, but one of them is basically the map objectives and how they're tackled and how they relate into the story. And so you guys seem to be touching on that up front, and you're like, hey, we're going to have some pretty interesting ones.
Yeah.
Can you give us some sort of examples or how you guys are going about this?
All right, I know Dylan doesn't like this map, but I'm going to touch on it anyway. The storm map, Dylan.
Okay.
So part of why I think our design philosophy for map objectives works is because we often will take an idea and say, all right, this looks cool. Fuck it. Let's go all the way with it. Right. We don't want to half bake things, and have like a C's that has kind of a side objective that's maybe kind of interesting. We do some weird things. Like there's a map where you're on a ship and there's a storm and lightning is hitting the ship every turn. You can see where the lightning is going to hit, and you can move enemy units into those spaces, or you can move your units into those spaces to tank the lightning, basically to save your ship's health. And you have to clear out, the things that are causing the lightning before it destroys the ship. And that kind of creates a very interesting level dynamic of, okay, how do I move slow enough that I can keep the ship from breaking apart while also getting there fast enough to destroy these things? And there's a lot of unique stuff you can do with that because we have a lot of movement tools and kind of not map altering, but unit altering abilities that allow you to do interesting things for that.
I don't know. I'm sensing a new boat map that's going to give everyone PTSD.
Oh, big time. I'm sorry in advance.
100%.
I'm sorry in advance. But we're not
a lot of
backing down from the PTSD maps.
I'm glad that you've gone for the boat map. Like the boat map is so iconic in Fire Emblem. People are going to hear this and go, "Oh no!"
But how could we not? You gotta.
I definitely appreciate that. That's honestly great.
gotta inflict PTSD on people.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? That's why we developed it.
Yeah, that's why we started this game.
Scratch that. We definitely, I guess that was kind of a roundabout example of saying we really, really tie what you're doing in the map to what's happening in the story. And even if sometimes that seems like a weird thing to tie into SRPG gameplay, like we go for it. And it's fun.
Mm-hmm. And sort of spiraling off that, I guess we can go into this. It's like you said, you've got something that's sort of like a support system, but it's also story-based triggers. Is that like on-map conversations? Is it before? Is it after? How does that work?
So if you've played the Tellius games, we have a base system that's very similar to that. In between every level, you can visit the base, you can upgrade your weapons, you can bond your units. And then, like you're saying, it's similar to the support system. Your units have limited slots, but they can befriend other units in the party. And then at certain points in the story, they will be able to upgrade their bonds and, view conversations between each other.
So I'm going to ask a really hard question.
Let's hear it.
Can I marry the students?
Oof.
I go a couple games back, and the real question is, can you marry your sister?
Okay. Well, how about, can we do that?
You cannot do that. You cannot marry the students. Romance is not a mechanic.
Got it. So sorry for all the shippers out there. Unfortunately, they do not have a romance system.
Yeah, you can ship them on your own time. But really the point is, when because we talked about it. We talked about it a lot, actually. This is kind of part of the discussion because, we know people really like having the romance. But for us and the cast that we've built up, the amount of differences is just there was no way that we could give you a decent amount of choice while staying true to the characters, because most of them really would not want to marry each other. And so we didn't want to force them into that scenario and, have faulty character bonds to write.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And you guys definitely said that one of the focuses that you have is making sure that the story is very character driven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that really does help us is, where the focus of the bonds, isn't on, oh, these people are slowly starting to love each other. They're really, most of them are just friends. There are, not all of them are strictly platonic, but it's in some ways it's more like you're going through hard stuff with the boys, like there's a kinship that is less carnal, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another thing is it kind of limits our scope with actually writing the bonds themselves, because if we have to write bonds in a way that portrays like a budding relationship or romance, then it kind of it'll kind of just be the same pattern for every romance. It won't really involve necessarily a kind of conversation that wouldn't have that sort of romance thing, and so it kind of limits our scope. I think our bonds are going to be really good because of that.
But that doesn't mean that there aren't any romantically involved characters in the story. Like,
there are.
Yeah, there are.
Okay.
But it's
not anybody.
Yeah, you don't have the option of doing it for anyone you want.
Yeah, you don't have a Corin that can just marry whoever they want on a whim.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's definitely fair. And that's definitely one thing that I always stress on when it comes to sort of character development and support conversations. The more options that you give people, the more diluted the energy goes to actually making sure that the quality in each one of those options is a good thing and is like up to the standard that you want. So I can totally appreciate that. And to like, oh, this character has supports or bonds with this many people, and they're all going to develop in a static way that you either are linear or maybe less linear than you think, but will give the character a good enough level of development because it's focused on them.
Yeah. I also found it kind of strange in some Fire Emblem games where you'd get to the A, and then you're just flirting so much, right? And then you marry someone else, and then it's just like, well, what happened to that? What happened to that interaction before?
That's a very good point. Yeah, that is a very good point.
It just didn't fit for, we take our characterization really, really seriously. And, these people all have, we know who their families are. We know what their background is. We know where they're from. We spend so much time building out the world so that they're a real character and they're believable and they're, everything about them is fleshed out. It just would have felt so bad to then have every support lead into something that doesn't fit them.
Mm-hmm. So we've actually gone almost an hour without talking about anything that has to do with the story. Do you want to give us like a little bit of a summary about sort of the story and what we can expect from it? Like, is it a dark story a la Genealogy of the Holy War? Is it going to be sort of a more lighthearted Power of Friendship kind of thing like Fire Emblem 7? What are we expecting with the story of Dark Deity?
It is darker than 7.
Okay.
We can confidently say that.
Yeah.
Oh, what do we say about that?
I don't know. It's like there's so much, and
I'm going to tiptoe around it a little bit.
Yeah, don't spoil anything because I would get upset.
Huge, but I know people who have been following along with the reveals know that all of the main characters are young. Irving, who is the main character. There's a group of main characters, but Irving is kind of the singular headpiece for the game. Is 17. And so there is a lot of, coming of age in the story. It's not, we don't have established heroes doing crazy things. It's not, you don't start out grand and get crazy.
It's grounded.
It's pretty grounded, and it's not very lighthearted. A lot of it gets pretty dark.
Not to say there aren't lighthearted things.
There's plenty of lighthearted things, yeah.
Yeah.
But the flow isn't, it's not all happy-go-lucky, let's go defeat the Demon Lord, like...
Yeah.
Oh, we killed him, nice! there's definitely some darkness going on.
So there's some Dark Deity going on.
Yeah,
I guess it's in the name. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just the general mood.
The most important thing to me is, do you have plot twists, and are they good?
Ooh, that's
good,
not
Chip.
going to be up for us to decide.
Yeah.
To the first part, yes, we have plot twists. I really, really like our story, and of course, I would hope every dev really likes their story.
That wasn't the case forever, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, Chip?
Yeah. The story was weak for a while. We
completely revamped it a little bit ago.
It's been
not a little bit, a while ago.
Yeah, quite some time at this point. But boy, I'm sorry. This isn't the most coherent answer, just because we're trying to avoid giving spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much to this story that we haven't really talked about.
There's some melancholy stuff that goes down. That it's not all roses, and you might do some things that you're not super happy or comfortable with as a player, just because that's what goes down.
Well, that's good. That's good enough for me. I mean, I had asked you the question, and all I would have expected was, yes, we have plot twists, and yes, they're going to knock your socks off. So be ready. That's all I wanted to hear.
All right.
You didn't have to go into any detail for that. So
listen to his answer.
You heard it here first. I'm like a half developer on the project now officially. I just answer PR for them.
In fact, there's a spot if you want to join us.
No. Doesn't want any of that smoke.
So, villains. It wouldn't be my channel without me talking about villains. And I know Chip and I had talked a little bit, and he was like, you're going to be satisfied. But I want them to hear it from you. Am I going to be able to make a did nothing wrong video on one of your villains?
Ooh.
If you're looking for a villain that is well realized, that is not just evil for the sake of evil, that has real motivations that you can understand, that you can empathize with. We've got that. That's a huge focus of ours. We've said from the start.
That's true.
We hate games where the villain is just evil for no reason. He's just I like killing people, and it's like, God, I cannot get into this world. So we've stayed away from that. Our villains, I think, are in many respects very understandable. It's not just an us versus them. Everyone has real motives. And I think that's super important when you're telling a story.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with villains. Because we sort of talked about this a little bit, where I was like, there are two types of effective villains. There is the one that is very sympathetic and goes through a lot of character development. And then there is the other that is just effective, like a Vaulter, for example, who is just so evil and so in your face. And he's got a little bit of backstory, but for the most part, he's just that force that is festering within your gameplay slowly along the way that makes him so effective.
Yeah, our villains definitely have a lot of backstory. And I think once you understand their backstory and you learn about it, then you'll be wondering, are they doing something wrong here?
You might have a hard time through the game deciding which of those two villains our villains are.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that then. And speaking of which, you guys had a bunch of stretch goals on your Kickstarter. You actually hit them all, and one of them, which I'm super looking forward to, is the villain side stories. So we are actually going to be able to play as the villains for a couple chapters. Is that correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm. We're really excited for those. That might come out a little bit after release. We haven't committed to having that done on release, just because it was a big promise of ours to release on time. But villain sides, I'm so excited for those. Woo! They're going to be fun. You're going to be able to play as the villains. You're going to see some of the story from the villain's perspective. We might lock it behind. You have to complete the game first, just because there'll be a whole lot of spoilers in them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what we can show while out of the main structure of the story is so increased.
Yeah, just being able to play as the villains and see things from their perspective sometimes provides just such a drastically different experience that really makes it worth it.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited. That's one of the things for me, whenever I see a game, I'm like, I just want to be the villain for the entire campaign. Can I just be evil? Or maybe unknowingly be evil. At the end of the day, I finish the game and I'm like, well, shit, it turns out I was the villain all along. And so, this is a happy medium for me. I'll settle for this. It's not my guilty pleasure game just yet, but this is promising.
Yeah. Well, and so it's also cool to see the story from a different perspective in terms of, you're playing levels. It's one thing to play the super jacked teenager units that are screaming funny things at enemies as they kill 50 of them. What is it like to play as the enemies that are going up against stronger units?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot we can do with it.
Yeah, and you guys do have voice acting. Now that you brought that up, I do have it as a point just right after this one. But how much is voice acted? I know you guys said it's just the characters and the screams. The story is not voice acted. Is that correct?
That is correct. I will be honest in that we are still considering, right, because we can't do voice acting until the Kickstarter's over.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a matter of principle. Like, we can't, we've hired some people, we can't go and fully cast and do all that. We are still in consideration for whether or not we are going to do barks in the story. So, like the 3DS games have.
Right.
So for right now, we definitely have in the gameplay, crit lines and the like that. We may have story voice acting.
All right, so stay tuned, everyone. We'll see.
A satisfying answer because it's still up in the air, but
no, it's totally understandable. And aside from that, there's actually going to be a beach mode / bikini mode for people who want the fan service. So that was on the Kickstarter too, and obviously everyone wanted it. So if you guys want to see like male characters in Speedos or string bikinis or whatever, I'm sure they're going to do something along those lines.
I'm sure they're going to want to see Fenton. If you haven't seen Fenton,
Speedo is a big draw.
Oof. Yes.
I have seen that for better or for worse.
I have seen that.
I have seen that.
Yeah.
So
for worse.
Beach mode's fun. Beach mode was largely, we wanted to have something where it was literally just we kind of throw money at it and we don't have to work. We just have someone make them.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the perfect kind of stretch goal that doesn't affect your launch window. We're excited for beach mode. There's so much fun stuff we can do. Oh my god.
Yeah, actually, our beach contest. So
And
someone
today?
makes a contest to see who will make the best costume for one of our characters, and it's actually ending today. So we'll probably post up a poll. It'll probably be up by the video comes out.
We'll be
regarding that
which
contest.
Yeah, those have been really nice to see. Sort of all the talented artists coming together and creating fan art for the game. It's so cool.
These people are so talented, and it's hard to even describe how cool it is as developers to have people that care enough about our game to make art right now. Like that's so cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's so endearing to see like, oh, these people actually are so invested that they want to, spend some of their own time to create art for us. So, I mean, I can't imagine. I'm sure it's going to be great.
Yeah, we're pretty excited.
All right, so I've played through this game. I've sort of gone through Dark Deity. I've experienced, the entire linear story. I've played the villain side stories, and I've done the beach mode. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much am I right now in this moment going to want to replay this game? And is there a reason for me to do more than one playthrough?
Ooh, that's a good question. It really depends on who you are as a person, right? We have a lot of different things you can do to make the game replayable.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond the customization, right? You can't use all the units, in one playthrough. You can't see all the bonds. So even without, the randomizer and stuff like that, there's different ways to build units. There's different units to use, and there's different bonds to see. So, it's playable again for that reason, with without even considering the random level ups and all that always contribute to replayability in this kind of game. But I love randomizers personally, so I always wanted to put one in this game. And it's the kind of thing where someone's either going to work on it for 2 years to put it in later, or I can spend some time to put it in now at 5% of the effort. Just because I have the code. There are a lot of customization options going into a new campaign. You can randomize at what point your characters come in. You can randomize their growths, or aptitudes is what we call them in our game. You can randomize base stats to a certain degree, randomize what enemies show up, randomize what weapons the enemies have. We're going to have a one-for-all mode, which is kind of a shit show, where you can use one unit for all 30 playable characters.
Oh my god.
There's reverse recruitment. You can put set growths to 0, aptitudes to 0 if you want. There's a lot of different ways to play the game, and they're pretty fun. Seeing the story from like the wrong characters is really funny.
Mm-hmm. So does the story change at all in any playthroughs? Are there decisions that actually matter? Because I know that's a meme in Fire Emblem.
Yeah, so there are not. And that was a very conscious decision in terms of setting our scope, because we are a small team and this is our first project.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to outscope ourselves by having a branching storyline that actually mattered. And to us, it was okay. Let's either do it and do it well, or tell a linear story, because that's also powerful.
Yeah, no, linear stories for me. I actually am someone who probably prefers linear stories. Every now and then, if you mix in, let's say we can use Fire Emblem 7 as an example, where you have sort of the Lloyd and Linus maps where you can get like one or the other, and it'll show you like a little bit of a different side of the story, but it's within the same scope, for example. Do you guys have anything like that?
We do have some kind of minute options that will change like small dialogue pieces, but there's nothing that changes the course of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good enough for me.
So there are some choices to be made, and a lot of those tie into how you play the levels rather than, like, oh, let me sit here and choose this or this. There's some small changes that might happen to how you view this, but nothing major.
So just with the replayability, you don't have to just do a randomizer to have replay the game. Obviously, again, like we said, with the class differences and evolving like a tier 2 class into a different tier 3, it's that's going to add a lot to the replayability. And every character has a different personal skill, right? So everyone's going to play different, and just all that combination, all that difference between each playthrough, I think will add to the replayability of the game.
Yeah, the game was built to be replayable well before we thought of doing a randomizer.
Yeah,
and then we added the randomizer, and now there's a lot of replayability.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see this being an easily let's playable sort of game.
Oh yeah. Right. I can't wait to see those. I'm gonna spend too much time watching those. I'm probably gonna wither away watching.
Probably gonna make one, Chip.
I'll definitely make one. Yeah.
Oh, I'm doing one too. No, I'm telling you right now.
It's gonna be good
to watch it.
So the last thing is sort of, when do we expect to see the game? How much is it going to cost? What platforms can we get it on? I know you guys are still kind of in the deciding moment on some of those points, but if you can sort of give us like a little bit of a structural answer to that.
Yeah, this is I wish we had more info on the consoles. I'm going to say right now, like, we are not in a position to really talk about what consoles we think it'll be on at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally possible that it will just be on PC and Steam, and it's possible that won't be the case. And we can't really say more in either direction about that right now.
Okay, that's fair.
Which, believe me, is as frustrating for us as it is for all of you.
And when you say Steam, is that going to be both Windows and Mac, or is it just Windows?
Right now, it's just Windows. I actually, because of quarantine, I don't have a Mac, and I don't have friends that own Macs, because, everyone has PCs. So
I have one.
I need to get my hands on one so I can test it. It might be on Mac. That's just all going to depend on, the effort level in porting it over.
Right.
So that's still up in the air as well, which, sorry, but that's just where we are right now.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And then as for price, we committed to, a long time ago, we committed to 20. So it'll likely on across the board be $19. And I will say our I can send you some stuff to show for the art book is going to be so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to have it.
Oh, jeez.
Because we have so much.
Yeah.
We have so much stuff to put in there that's, sketches, or it's process art, or it's, like what Irving looked like before his redesign, which no one has seen. Lots of stuff like that that's just that you would never get the chance to see outside of that. So not to self plug, but that is the art book is probably the coolest thing for me on the Kickstarter.
Yeah. Another thing is MS Paint sketches that we've made.
Yes.
Across
we have
journey.
We have committed to the MS Paint sketches.
There's a lot, and they're so bad. They're worse than you could possibly imagine. So probably add those.
It'll come out in around March, you think?
March is the goal, yeah.
Yeah, so you can pick it up then, and we'll see how this evolves. And I mean, I don't really have anything else to add unless you guys want to say anything or any closing statements.
If you made it to this point, thanks for listening.
Just thank you. Thanks for watching the video, and thank you, the Link King, for having us.
For sure. I was definitely looking forward to having you guys and sort of poking a little bit and probing about certain things that you don't normally get to talk about with developers. So this has been actually really, really, really cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Very enjoyable, yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much, Chip and Dylan, for sitting with me for what is an hour or maybe over an hour. I don't know how long this is going to be after I edit it down, but this was an excellent conversation. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching.
Great questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Thanks.